the past, however many, 15, 14 years now it's been under Dan Snyder, it's been one train wreck after another when it comes to head coaching. And I think right now everybody's kind of on the fence with it. I think that everybody kind of knew this was the coach that they wanted, and it was apparent back when they didn't fire Jim Haslett. And that, for me, almost solidified who the next head coach was going to be, because Haslett and Gruden have actually worked together before, but in the UFL and in reverse roles. Haslett actually gave Gruden his first job coaching in the football world. So, I think once as soon as McVay was held on to, as Raheem Morris was held on to, and as Jim Haslett was held on to, I think once those three guys were set in stone for the following season, I think that's when it was pretty much made clear that Jay Gruden, was going to be the next coach of the Washington Redskins, and it was just going to be a matter of time. And, one person I talked to even said that he was their guy back in 2012. They already knew that they were going to hire Jay Gruden sometime down the road, and, it happened to be this year.
Yeah, definitely. And it seems like a good hire because, despite Andy Dalton's blow up there in the playoffs, he had a heck of a season under Gruden's offense. And with the weapons the Redskins have, obviously with RG3 and Alfred Morris, and hopefully they can add a little something in the receiving core with Pierre Garçon. But I thought the real problem for Washington this year was the defensive side of the football. So for them to bring back Haslett and Morris, I thought that was an interesting choice. Are Redskins fans content with that? Or obviously the loss of Fletcher is going to be huge, but do they feel Haslett can turn this defense around?
No, and that was probably one of the big things for me that upset me, was because I felt like Jim Haslett should have been fired, and I actually don't think that they should have hired Jay Gruden. They should have gone after a guy, like Mike Zimmer, a defensive-minded football coach that can come in and focus on the defense. That's the kind of coach that I wanted. But, as history showed us, Dan Snyder, he's an offensive-minded thinker. He loves points, he loves offense, he loves all that kind of stuff. He doesn't really focus on the defense that much. But I could go on forever about Dan Snyder, so I'll try to get away from him here. Jim Haslett, he's definitely not the guy that I think Redskins fans want to have as the defensive coordinator, and it's painfully obvious why. They're perennial lousy on defense. Every year they're just a lousy defense. The secondary is constantly underachieving. This year, I think D'Angelo Hall being voted to be a Pro Bowl alternate. While I think congratulations to him, that's great for him. It's only because of stats. You look at 3 defensive touchdowns, 4 interceptions. That's the only reason why. If you actually watch D'Angelo Hall play, it's plainly obvious that he's not an all pro or a Pro Bowl caliber cornerback. So, Jim Haslett, he's here for another year, and it's kind of a good old boy thing. It's Jay Gruden doing a favor for Jim Haslett by keeping him around. He's expressed how he wants to run the 3-4 defense, even though it hasn't really worked out all that well. Personally, if you got a guy like Brian Orakpo and Ryan Kerrigan on the roster, why not go to a 4-3? Those two were bred to be defensive ends. They're not supposed to drop back into pass coverage. You don't want Brian Orakpo covering a slot receiver like Wes Welker or Danny Amendola. That's a train wreck waiting to happen. So, I think Jim Haslett, I would say he's got one more year, and if the defense is still not doing well, I think then that's when you see him get fired. But he's here for at least 2014. And, we'll see what happens. And then maybe further on down the road, I could see Raheem Morris kind of stepping up like what Sean McVay has done, where he's gone from tight ends coach to offensive coordinator. I could see Raheem Morris going from defensive backs coach to defensive coordinator. Actually, a lot of people said that would happen or predicted that would happen because he's well-respected in the organization. The players love him. And he's got a history of coaching good DBs. And I think that his problem here, it hasn't been that he's a bad coach. I think there just hasn't been good talent for him to coach.
Right. And we talk about some free agents here. You mentioned D'Angelo Hall. He is a free agent. This offseason, we actually have two Chicago Bears who are free agents, and one of the best ball punchers in the league, Charles Peanut Tillman, is a free agent this season. So if the Redskins are looking for a cornerback from Chicago, Charles Tillman or Tim Jennings, a Pro Bowler as well, is an option. Some defensive tackles also. Henry Melton is an option who's been out this season. Geno Atkins from Cincinnati, and you were talking about Mike Zimmer, Atkins from the Zimmer tree, defensively one of the players as well, and B.J. Raji from Green Bay. So we talk about the plans of the Redskins coaching staff and bringing back bringing back the coach on defense and also bringing in Gruden at the head coach. What do you see for the plans at free agency? Obviously, you look at the Albert Haynesworth signing a couple of years ago or a few years back. The Redskins can spend some money.
Yeah, they've got about $36 million available right now to spend, and they could very well go out and they could clear more by cutting some more players. So, there's a lot that they can do with free agency because at the positions where they have need, especially on defense, there's depth, there's talent there. And, one of the places that I personally start with is up front. You got to win the battle at the line of scrimmage, or else, it doesn't matter how good your secondary is. If you can't win at the point of attack, the team is just going to run the football on you. One guy that I look at if we're going to run this 3-4 defense is Terrence Cody or Ziggy Hood from Pittsburgh and Terrence Cody from Baltimore. Both have years of experience running the nose in the 3-4 defense. And I think signing either one of those two would really boost the line of scrimmage, and because they were beaten play in and play out at the point of attack. There was no pass rush. They weren't able to stop the football. They weren't able to stop the run. So I think you certainly have to shore up the line of scrimmage. And then as you keep moving backwards, they got to bring back Brian Orakpo. I think that's important. They got to bring back Perry Riley. You look at a guy like Wesley Woodyard out of Denver. He's a possible re-signing. And then you move into the defensive secondary, and you look at Sam Shields, Walter Thurman, Captain Munderland, Tracy Porter, Malcolm Jenkins, T.J. Ward, Jairus Byrd. I mean, there are tons of options for them to improve that defense, and it can all be done over the course of one offseason. The only problem is will they have enough cash? Because Brian Orakpo isn't going to be cheap. Jairus Byrd is not going to be cheap. Terrence Cody's not going to be cheap. They're not going to be able to fill all the holes at once, which is going to be the nice thing about the draft, especially at linebacker. You look at a guy like Shane Scove is going to be available in the second round, or Kyle Vanoy out of BYU, another linebacker that should be available in the second round when they get up to pick. So, if they want to fill some holes in free agency, they got to go up front, and then they got to go in the defensive secondary and try to fill in the gaps at linebacker through the draft, which is more than doable for them. So, I look at Terrence Cody or Ziggy Hood, and then, possibly Jairus Byrd or T.J. Ward to play in the middle of the field, and maybe a guy like Walter Thurman as well. But if they want to retain people that they already have on the roster, you look at a guy like Reed Dowdy. He could possibly be someone that returns because he's going to be cheap, he's going to be productive, and he's going to do whatever you want him to do.
Absolutely. So you're looking for the Redskins, obviously, to spend the money on the defensive side of the ball. But there still are some holes on the offensive side. Along with filling the linebacker position in the draft, do you see some playmakers for RG3 in the draft that the Redskins are looking to pick up? Also on offense, before you get started too, what about Kirk Cousins? Another question there. Does he get traded after his late performance in the season? A solid late performance with that.
No, I don't see him being traded. I think that his trade value has significantly declined to the point where I question whether they can even get a fourth-round draft pick for him. I think they would almost come out in the red, maybe only be able to get a fifth or a sixth-round pick, or they could package him with another player and another pick to get a higher pick. But I don't see much value. I mean, there are people talking about how Cousins could possibly bring you a second or even a late first-round pick. I don't see that happening anymore. I see that a late round pick is what I see coming from Kirk Cousins. So, I think hanging on to Kirk Cousins will be the better idea because he's still a quality backup quarterback. He's been in the system long enough. He is content with his role, and he's a good guy to have on the team because he's not a loudmouth quarterback. He does what he does. He does it quietly, and he didn't play that bad. All right, he played about as good as you would expect a backup quarterback to be. All right, he's finally proven once and for all that he's not going to be a starting quarterback in the NFL, but he's a viable backup. He's going to stay at a cheap price. I say you keep him as a backup quarterback because he's going to understand the offense. Certainly with Chip Kelly, or not Chip Kelly, with Jay Gruden bringing in a new offense, he's going to understand that, and you'd hate to bring in a new guy, trade him, bring in a new guy that isn't going to pick up the offense maybe like he would, or you trade Kirk Cousins and then what? Possibly re-sign Rex Grossman. I mean that's just a mess waiting to happen.
Former Bear right there.
You hang on to Kirk Cousins.
And talking about, again, Tom was talking about the offense. There's many options to go, but switching over to the Wizards really quick for the wrap up question here. Looking at the Wizards winning 2 in a row, one in Chicago against our Bulls, or my Bulls, not Tom's Bulls. Tom's a 76ers fan, and they're not playing great basketball. But again,
loving it.
Loving it. But he wants to tank for Jabari or take for Wiggins or take for whoever. But the Wizards are playing some solid basketball, and one of the pieces is John Wall, but next to him is Bradley Beal, a guy who was taken in last year's draft, 17.4 points per game. A very nice number. You know, people were talking about him being an all-star in the future, but 17.4 points per game is pretty solid for a second-year player. Are we talking about this kid being an all-star? Maybe I shouldn't say kid. A very solid player being an all-star this year?
I don't know about this year because you still have John Wall doing a majority of the work, and I think if anybody's going to get that bit to the All-Star game, I think it's going to be John Wall, who's averaging 19.7 points per game and then 8.6 assists per game. I mean, he's playing some of the best basketball he's ever played, and he's been electric to watch. He's fueled this team all the way to where they are now, and Bradley Beal has been an excellent guy to fill in for that support role because prior to Beal getting drafted, it was pretty much John Wall, having to rely on John Wall to make the plays, hit the shots, and kind of lead this team. But now he's got Bradley Beal alongside of him, and only great things are going to come from that. And then you look at Otto Porter Jr., another guy that's slowly going to start to step up here. He had to work back from an injury, but his role in the team is only going to increase as he begins to fill out and to really get used to life in the NBA and the playing style that the Wizards are looking for. So I think that Bradley Beal's still a year or two away from being an all-star pick. But I think John Wall definitely could be a year for him. I mean, I think he's played well enough to where he deserves the consideration, absolutely, and he's got my vote for sure. And I know, I got the Washington Wizards bias here since I'm from DC, but he's got my vote. He's played some of his best basketball ever.
He's finally got a jump shot,
and there you go. Finally got a jump shot. He's evolved his game tremendously from when he was a rookie.
Absolutely.
And, he leads the team in points, assists, and steals. So only good things come from John Wall, and I definitely think he's worthy of an all-star shot.
All right, Mr. Brian Skinnell, thank you very much again. Brian